What do you do when you feel overwhelmed? Do you curl up on your couch and watch another show? Do you pick up a book or listen to some music? There are countless ways to find peace and relaxation. But sometimes we forget about the most important step. We need to look inwards and explore the feelings we're trying to hide. That's exactly what happens in today's story. No maps bore its name. No villager claimed to have planted it, yet it existed as real as sorrow and as silent as memory. This water, they said, held the essence of dreams, of hopes, and heartbreaks whispered to the moon. And one day, driven by an insatiable curiosity, she followed the wind's call. She walked barefoot through the tall grasses, ignoring the prickle of brambles on her skin and the sting of nettles on her arms. She whispered songs her mother once sang over her cradle. The rain returned softly, brushing against windows, sliding down rooftops like fingertips. In the center of the garden, where she always sat, a new flower bloomed tall, golden, and unlike any she had seen. Children speak of the girl who walks barefoot into the mist. Mira finds solace in the garden, a place where her emotions, which may be misunderstood or unaccepted in her village, are welcomed and celebrated. The garden mirrors her inner landscape, reflecting and amplifying her emotions through its blooms. It's a testament to the power of embracing our feelings, even the difficult ones, as they hold the key to our growth and understanding. The story reminds us that we can find beauty and meaning in the rainiest parts of ourselves, and that sometimes all we need is a quiet corner and a gentle rain to help us bloom. Villagers leave letters in the hollow tree near the path, wishes, regrets, poems folded small. What did you think of the rain garden and Mira's journey of self? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you, and if you're as thirsty for stories as we are, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support keeps our storytelling alive and brings magic to even more listeners like yourself. Until next time, keep an eye out for the extraordinary and the ordinary. Who knows? You might just find yourself wandering through a magical garden of your own. And when the clouds sigh open and the garden stirs once more, Mira is there, listening and blooming. It glowed faintly, even under the gray sky. Mira stepped closer, heart thrumming. At the base of the flower was a small plaque, half buried in moss. She hadn't noticed it before. Brushing it clean, she read the weathered inscription. To those who carry the rain within, you are the bloom. Her breath caught. Suddenly the garden wasn't just a mystery. It was a mirror. It bloomed not only with water from the sky, but with the stories, the sorrows, and the softness people brought to it. The garden needed the rain, but it also needed someone to receive it, and Mira, who had wept beside sleeping roots and sung lullabies into silence, had been part of its blooming all along. Mira ran. She didn't stop to grab a coat. She didn't think. She followed the familiar trail, breathless, barefoot, wild with hope. And when she passed beneath the arch, the garden greeted her. Not with an explosion, but a hush. The first bloom opened near her foot, a pale violet that pulsed with light. Then another, and another. Slowly, gently, the rain coaxed the garden into life. And Mira felt something inside her unfurled. She told the garden about the ache in her chest, about the letter her father never sent, about the way silence sometimes howled louder than thunder. And though the garden did not bloom, it listened. When she finally emerged, blinking, into the clearing, she gasped. Before her stretched the garden, breathing life into the very concept of tranquility. In that moment, she understood. This was the place she had been seeking all along, the place that resonated with the melody of her soul. To drink from its source was to taste a lifetime of silent tears. And again, always alone, always silent. She never took anything from the garden, never plucked a petal or broke a stem. She only sat in the center, letting the wet wind wrap around her like a shawl. Flowers bloomed near her knees, ferns unfurled beside her toes. Once a blue blossom opened in the exact shape of a teardrop, and she wondered if the garden was learning her heart. Then one morning the rain did not come. The clouds hovered, thick with promises they couldn't keep. The garden lay still, The trees stood like watchers, motionless and bare. Mira waited. Her palms turned skyward. Nothing. The days that followed were dry, a cruel, scraping kind of dry that made the air taste of dust and denial. Weeks passed. The villagers rejoiced at the sun's return. Laundry dried faster. The market bustled, but Mira felt a tightening in her chest. The garden was waiting, and so was she. Mira, a young woman with eyes the color of rain and hair like tangled vines, knew none of these tales. When she first stumbled upon the garden, she was drawn to it by an inexplicable pull, a yearning for something she couldn't name. Mira lived in the village, yet she had always felt a bit like a stranger. She loved the familiar cobblestone streets and the comforting scent of baking bread, but she also felt a deep connection to the whispering woods and the secrets they held. While other children played, Mira would wander into the emerald embrace of the trees, talking to the ancient oaks and weeping willows. The villagers, with their busy lives and bustling markets, saw nothing magical in these woods. To them, they were just trees, silently soaking up the sun. But Mira knew better. She sensed a vibrant energy humming beneath the bark, a silent wisdom in their rustling leaves. In sunlight, it was just earth-cracked, patient, waiting, a hollow space of bare trees. In sleeping roots, children who stumbled upon it during dry days saw nothing special, just a patch of land, dulled by time. But when the rain came soft, silvery and slow as forgiveness, the garden awoke. Petals pushed through the clinging mud like whispered promises. Flowers of every shade, indigo blues, lantern oranges, soft morning grays, bloomed as if painted by the sky. The leaves shimmered with silver veins, catching the raindrops like poems written in water. A gentle mist rose, and the entire garden hummed, not with noise, but with knowing and old, quiet magic. No one understood it, not fully, and no one owned it, but stories clung to it like ivy. Some said the garden was once tended by a girl who could speak to clouds. Others whispered of a lonely painter who wept into the soil each night, planting color with his sorrow. Still others believed the garden bloomed from the tears of the earth itself, grieving what humans had forgotten. This is a tale about healing, finding solace, and embracing the beauty of the unknown. But before we begin, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Days were filled with a rhythm of work and rest, laughter and gossip, and nights were spent sharing stories around crackling hearts. But tucked away behind the village, almost forgotten, was a narrow path veiled in wild grasses where dewdrops clung tenaciously, hiding secrets only the wind knew. It was a place seldom visited, spoken of only in hushed tones by the village elders. Few dared to venture down that overgrown path. Fewer still understood its significance. Most preferred to ignore its existence altogether. Yet for those who did know, the path held a promise of solace and understanding. Your support means everything to us. And now, let's dive into the enchanting world of our story. Once upon a time, nestled between rolling hills and whispering woods, was a quaint village where life moved at the pace of the seasons. If you followed it far enough, past the graceful bending birches and under the crumbling stone arch, you'd come upon a place spoken of only in lullabies and old women's hushes, the rain garden. Deep in its heart, a spring bubbled forth, overflowing with crystal clear water. She had heard the whispers of the wind through the trees, calling her toward the forgotten path, beckoning her to a place where the earth remembered. And so she came back again the next time the rain returned. She walked there anyway, even without the rain. She sat among its sleeping roots and read aloud from her grandfather's old books. Then one night the clouds broke open again, not in rage, but in relief. But this time, something was different. Now, years later, the garden still wakes only when the rain returns. The rain garden is more than just a beautiful escape. It's a symbol of healing. We hope you enjoyed this enchanting tale as much as we loved bringing it to you. Once upon a time, nestled between hills and halves, there was a village where the houses leaned close together, as if for comfort, and the roofs wore moss like soft, dark hats. The village had a name, but no one remembered what it was. Beyond the wall, tangled wild, Things grew, and rumors said there was a path hidden there, a way out. Most folks didn't believe in paths or rumors. They believed in sturdy walls and sheltering roofs and the weight of work. And every time the mist touched the treetops, Mira followed the hidden path under the arch. The world beyond the stone faded behind her, and she stepped into that secret rhythm where grief and beauty grew side by side. But she wasn't alone anymore. Not truly. One morning, after a steady midnight rain, Mira entered the garden and found something new. A little envelope tucked between the moss-covered roots of an elder tree. It was damp but intact, sealed with twine. The writing was careful, childlike. "Dear garden," it began. "My brother moved away and took the sun with him. I miss him so much I can't breathe. Please, if you're magic, give him my hug in the rain." Mira sat still for a long time. Then she folded the letter gently and placed it beside the golden flower. The rain grew softer, almost reverent, and around the letter bloomed a small heart-shaped, glowing faintly, as if it had swallowed a bit of dusk. After that, more letters came, folded in leaves, tied with yarn, scribbled in chalk on flat stones. Some were wishes, some confessions, some were just long silences written down. Mira never asked the villagers who sent them. She didn't need to. The garden had become a place for unspoken things, and she, their quiet guardian. And then one day, something rare happened. A sunny afternoon, no rain, no clouds, just light and laughter in the village square, and drying herbs hanging outside every kitchen window. The path to the garden was cracked and thirsty, and Mira hesitated. Still, she went. The garden was still and bare, as it always was. Under the sun, the golden flower had folded inward, sleeping like a memory. The other blooms had retreated back into the soil, their colors only faint echoes. But something tugged at her attention. Near the base of the arch, where roots curled like resting fingers, a single bud stood tall, unbloomed, and yet it quivered, unsure, as if listening for something that hadn't come. Mira knelt beside it and whispered softly, "I hear you." She cupped her hands around the bud and breathed gently into it. No rain, no magic, just breath, just presence. And the flower opened. It was pale, almost translucent, with a center that shimmered like moonlight on still water. Mira touched one of the petals, and a quiet warmth spread up her fingers like being forgiven. That was the first flower to bloom without rain. From then on, every time someone came to the garden with truth in their heart's rain or no rain, something bloomed. Just one flower, just enough. Words spread gently, like ripples. Villagers who had long forgotten how to feel began walking the path again. They brought old songs, small stones engraved with the names of people they missed, bits of ribbon from lost children's clothes. Everyone left something, and in exchange, the garden gave something back. Sometimes color, sometimes scent, sometimes only a breeze that felt like being held. And Miroshi became known, not by name, but by a new title, whispered respectfully in passing. The Keeper of Quiet Blossoms. One evening, as twilight stitched shadows between the trees, Mira found a bundle of dry branches lying in the center of the garden. They had been arranged carefully, like a cradle. Beneath them, a note dampened by dew. "My mother passed this morning. She loved gardens, but never saw this one. If there is any kindness left in the world, let her bloom here once." Mira placed her hand on the bundle. She closed her eyes. And in that moment, the sky, too, seemed to hold its breath. The clouds returned not heavy, but light as memory. And as the first raindrop fell, the garden bloomed not in color this time, but in fragrance. Sweet jasmine, earth warmed by tears. And in the cradle of branches, a single flower rose, ivory white, its petals lined with gold, as if someone had painted the edges with dawn. Mira stood in silence. The rain was not mourning, it was blessing. And so the garden became not just a mystery, not just a place that bloomed in rain. It became a place where grief softened into beauty, where people came not to forget, but to remember gently. And Mira, no longer lonely, now walked through the garden like someone who had become part of the weather patient, needed and filled with quiet. No, but a young woman named Mira did. Mira believed in whispers and half-remembered lullabies, and the feel of earth under her fingernails. Mira was different. When the wind shifted, bringing the scent of wood smoke and singing, she dreamed of stepping past the wall, venturing into the tangled wildness. Time had washed it away like sand slipping through fingers. This nameless village had forgotten how to dream. Now, dreams were dangerous things. At first, it was only a bud, tight and questioning, then burst into color, bold and unflinching. A single golden flower on a wall that had always been gray. Mira felt a stir inside her, a feeling like homecoming, like recognition, like the remembering of a name long forgotten. The next day, she returned to the wall. There, nestled in the crook of 2 stones, was a small plaque, and etched on it, barely visible, were the words, "Speak your truth and bloom where you are planted." Mira read those words, and something shifted, not just in the garden, but in her. She no longer felt like a visitor. She felt woven in, like her voice belonged in the hush, her silence part of the soil. The garden had chosen her, and she, without needing to say it aloud, had chosen it in return. What if a dream took root and bloomed into longing for something better? And people might leave the village, take their hard-earned skills elsewhere, and break the fragile peace. So dreaming was done in secret, if at all. On the edge of town stood a wall. Not high, not strong, just enough to keep out wandering scholars and wandering thoughts. Then one day the unthinkable happened. A flower bloomed on top of the wall. The rains continued to visit the village, now more often than before, as if the sky knew it was being heard. When the rain came, it was as though the world remembered how to breathe again. The air thrummed with life. The parched earth drank deeply, and a shiver of pure joy ran down my spine. The season had turned. Summer left quietly, like a guest who didn't want to wake the house. Faint murmurs carried on the wind, speaking of a forgotten magic, a hidden sanctuary, untouched by the relentless sun. With each step, I confronted the ghosts of my past, the echoes of laughter that once filled these paths, the shadows of dreams that had withered under the relentless sun. The rustle of leaves and the murmur of the wind our only company, as the final rays of sunlight faded from the sky, casting long shadows across the garden. I felt a gentle hand rest on my shoulder. Turning, I met the knowing gaze of the woman who was both myself and not. The woman, her face etched with weariness, turned to me, her eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. In the quiet symphony of rustling leaves and babbling brooks, I discovered a solace that defied the chaos of the world. The garden became my sanctuary, a refuge where the language of nature resonated with the rhythm of my soul. "You have shown great courage today," she said softly. "But the battle for the garden is never truly over. It requires tending, vigilance, and most importantly, love. Without these, even the strongest bloom can wither." Her gaze drifted to the fading light, and I saw in her eyes the fleeting nature of our time together. "Who are you?" I whispered, the question escaping before I could stop it. "I am you," she replied, her voice a gentle echo. "And you," she continued, her gaze piercing through the veil of time, "you are the future of this garden." As the last vestiges of daylight faded from the sky, she vanished, leaving me alone in the now silent garden. The golden flower drooped in my arms, its petals fluttering like a bird's wing. Holding it close, I felt a surge of determination mixed with an aching responsibility. The garden, our garden, depended on me now. The weight of her words echoed in my ears. I was the future of this garden, and so I vowed to tend to the dying plants, to water the thirsty roots, and sing to the wilting blossoms. And every day, as the sun rose and set, I returned to the garden, drawing strength from the resilient blooms, and whispering my hopes and dreams to the listening earth. And slowly, miraculously, the garden under my care, the withering plants revived, bursting forth with renewed vigor. New life sprouted, reaching towards the light, painting the landscape with vibrant hues of hope. And the golden flower, oh, the golden flower. It thrived, its radiance intensifying, casting a protective glow over the entire garden. Through it all, I walked the path of balance, embracing the changing seasons, learning to nurture life in the face of adversity. For, in the tapestry of existence, there are moments of bloom and moments of dormancy, but it is in the quiet moments of dormancy that the seeds of resilience are planted. And in that silent communion, I found a solace that transcended words. I walked on, my heart a compass, guiding me towards the quiet hum of hope. Day after day, I tended to the dying plants, coaxing life back into the withering stems, whispering words of encouragement to the drooping blossoms. One crisp morning, the sky heavy with unspoken menace, a horde descended upon us, their faces twisted with malice, their eyes gleaming with cruel intent. They were led by a man whose very presence seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Fear, cold and clammy, gripped my heart, squeezing the breath from my lungs. I cowered beside the woman, seeking solace in her calm demeanor, her unwavering strength. But when the leader stepped forward, his gaze fixed on the blooming flower, I knew our sanctuary was threatened. So here it is, he sneered, reaching out to pluck the flower from its stem, the mythical bloom of everlasting gold. I gasped, scrambling to shield the flower with my body, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The leader paused, his eyes narrowing in surprise. Then a cruel smile spread across his face. Well, what have we here? A brave little protector. You cannot save it. Nothing can stop me now. Ignoring my protests, he lunged for the flower, his rough hands tearing at its delicate petals. Suddenly, the woman stepped forward, her form radiating an otherworldly light. You defile this sacred space, she boomed, her voice echoing with power. With your touch, you have sealed your own fate. As she raised her hands, the garden stirred, the very essence of life awakened. Thorns erupted from the ground, ensnaring the leader's legs. Vines as thick as pythons coiled around his arms, binding him to the will of the earth. Terrified screams tore from his throat as the plants of the garden rose in defense of their dying kin. The remaining men, paralyzed with fear, could only watch in horror as the garden claimed its due. And in the end, all that remained of the horde was the echo of their screams and the stench of their terror. Slowly, miraculously, the garden began to stir. New shoots pushed through the parched earth, tiny green flames reaching for the light. Buds swelled on the branches, promising a riot of color come springtime. And the golden flower, the golden flower, it thrived, its radiant glow intensifying, bathing the garden in its warm embrace. The woman, my older self, my wiser self, shared with me the secrets of nurturing life in the face of adversity. She taught me to read the whispers of the wind, to find strength in solitude, and to seek beauty in the midst of decay. And then I saw it. Or perhaps it was the sun that finally broke through the leaden sky and touched my eyes with warmth. There, at the edge of the village, nestled amidst the ruins of what once was, stood a solitary cottage. Its windows, dark and vacant, seemed to stare back at me, reflecting the emptiness I sought to fill. Before me lay a garden, not of flowers and foliage, but of memories and longing. Here, amidst the skeletal remains of withering plants, I found solace. For in the very heart of this dying garden, a single golden flower bloomed. It stood defiant against the backdrop of decay, a radiant burst of sunshine amidst the encroaching darkness. Its petals, the color of liquid gold, unfurled slowly, as if reluctant to reveal the treasure hidden within. As I drew closer, the air around me shimmered, and the sound of distant laughter, like the tinkling of a music box, filled my ears. It was a melody both hauntingly familiar and achingly distant, like a half-remembered dream from a lifelong past. Hope, fragile yet tenacious, sprouted within my chest. Was this the answer I sought? Could this solitary bloom amidst the ruins be the solace my weary soul craved? With cautious steps, I ventured deeper into the garden, each footfall a whisper on the dry leaves crunching beneath my weight. The scent of damp earth and decaying blossoms hung heavy in the air, and there, amidst the ruins, bathed in the ethereal glow of the setting sun, stood a woman. Her form, slender yet graceful, seemed to blend seamlessly with the gnarled branches of an ancient oak that stood sentinel at the garden's heart. She moved with an eerie familiarity, like a specter from my own past, and I stood transfixed, unable to tear my gaze away. As she turned, her face, framed by cascading silver hair, was lifted to the fading light, and in that moment, I saw my reflection staring back at me, not from a mirror, but from the depths of my own soul. It was me, yet not me, older, weathered, yet somehow more vibrant than I knew myself to be. In her eyes, I saw a lifetime of stories, of joys and sorrows, triumphs and heartbreaks, all mirrored in the depths of my own being. I realized then that I had found more than a garden. I had found a part of myself that had been lost for seasons, if not years. They spoke of a garden, not of flowers and foliage, but of resilience, a place where even in the face of unrelenting drought, life persisted. A garden nourished by tears and tended by faith. My gaze fell upon the parched earth beneath my feet, cracked and barren, mirroring the desolate landscape of my soul. Yet within me, a flicker of defiance sparked to life. Despite the gnawing emptiness within, I rose to my feet, drawn by the faintest whisper of promise, the mere hint of solace. No fanfare, no goodbyes, just a gentle fading into the soft embrace of dawn. Autumn swept in after her, bringing with her the rustling of leaves and skies the color of softened stone. The village stirred from its summer slumber. Housewives drew curtains and laced the windows with candles. Blankets, heavy with the scent of lavender and dust, were shaken out to catch the last warm rays of the sun. Soup pots steamed on windowsills, and the murmur of voices echoed through the gathering dusk. Yet amidst this comforting bustle, there was one who did not join the season's change, one whose heart refused to settle into the rhythm of falling leaves and shortening days. I watched from afar, a silent witness to the slow descent into winter's quiet, for I waited for the rain. But it did not come. The days stretched into weeks, crisp and clear, mocking my vigil with their relentless cheer. The clouds gathered, dark and heavy on the horizon, only to drift away like ships sailing for distant shores. The sky, once a canvas of endless blue, was now a leaden gray, heavy with unspoken promises that never fell. The wind, once a playful spirit dancing through the trees, was now a mournful sigh whispering tales of parched earth and withered dreams. The air grew thick with the scent of fallen leaves and the heavy silence of unmet expectations. Each rustle of foliage, each creak of branches overhead echoed the relentless beat of my own despair. What was once solace became torment, the very essence of the turning season, a painful reminder of what I yearned for. And all around me, life went on, oblivious to the turmoil within. In that moment, I understood the profound truth that sometimes the most beautiful things in life are worth waiting an eternity for. This story began on a day, much like any other. It was then in the depths of this despair, when hope had taken flight and left me to my sorrow, that the whispers began. The path to the garden was not one of ease, but of introspection. For a time, we walked in companionable silence, each absorbed in our own thoughts. And so I stayed in the garden, finding comfort in the woman's quiet presence and the steadfast beauty of the blooming flower. But the tranquility of the garden was not destined to last. As the garden settled, the golden flower, wounded yet unbroken, leaned heavily on my shoulder. And so I found peace in the garden, a peace that whispered of enduring strength and unwavering hope. This story is dedicated to all the quiet heroes and heroines tending gardens in the hardest places. Once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a village nestled between hills, like a bird's nest. They tilled fields, mended fences, traded gossip over tea, In short, they lived like most people do. Only one boy named Eli followed her. He slipped out of town unseen, his steps as light as leaves. Then one day, a stranger arrived. She walked barefoot, hair wild, eyes filled with skies. Behind a veil of waterfall lay a clearing carpeted in moss. Flowers in every color danced in the air, kissed by a sky that spilled through the trees, gasping for air. He pushed himself upright, dripping, shivering. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The clearing became a sanctuary brimming with life. Eli found solace in the routine of watering, weeding, watching things grow. Mira stood mesmerized as the water shimmered before her, mirroring the night sky. He wanted to stop her, to pull her back from the brink of his submerged grief, but he couldn't. All he could do was watch as she stepped into the well and disappeared. Villagers started venturing into the hills, drawn by the promise of healing and understanding. Mira and Eli welcomed them, guiding them to the right blooms to soothe their troubled hearts. The old woman continued, "The garden isn't just a place. For Eli, it was fear, a crippling anxiety that had him constantly seeking control. When the villagers came, they no longer waited for the clouds, one the narrow one behind her, overgrown and sacred, the other leading back to the world, to the village, to the clamor of ordinary days. She knew then what the final bloom would be. A bridge, not of stone or wood, but of understanding, so that the garden would no longer be hidden, so that rain and pain and beauty wouldn't live in secret patches of forgotten soil, but everywhere, wherever someone carried a quiet sorrow, wherever someone dared to listen. And from that day forward, the garden was not just a place. It was a way of seeing, a way of feeling, a blooming that lived inside the rain and inside every heart that still remembered how to open. They brought their sorrows, their joys, their impotence. They came in sun and storm alike, and the garden bloomed according to what they carried. A girl left her anger folded in the hem of her dress. An old man brought laughter in a jar, saying it once belonged to his wife. A mother left silence 3 years of it for the child she could no longer find the words to reach. Each time, the garden responded, not always with flowers, sometimes with warmth in the air, sometimes with a breeze that smelled like someone's old coat, sometimes just with stillness so deep it felt like a prayer. And through it all, Mira remained, the keeper, the listener. But now, not alone. Eli stayed too. The boy with the storm eyes had become the garden's voice, singing to it in every kind of weather. His melodies found their way into the roots, the petals, the rain itself. Together, they tended not the plants but the people who came to bloom. As they emptied their hearts into the well, the water swirled, mirroring their pain and understanding. When they finished, a single flower bloomed at the edge of the well, deep green, edged with silver. Its petals curled inward, like they were still healing. Mira recognized it instantly. "It's for her," she whispered. Eli didn't ask who. He didn't need to. The flower opened wider. Inside, at the heart of the blossom, was something extraordinary, a single drop of rain that shimmered like a pearl. Suspended. Eternal. "She gave this back," Mira said softly. The rain was hers, and now she shared it with the garden. Eli reached out, touched the edge of the flower. He didn't cry, but his breath caught, and in that pause, something unknotted. It's a reflection, a mirror to the soul. To heal this place, you must water the essence, the core of what these flowers symbolize. With newfound determination, Mira and Eli approached the well. Instead of watering the blossoms, they gazed into the shimmering depths, searching for the feelings hidden beneath the water's surface. But with each visitor, the garden's magic faded a little. The colors dulled, the petals drooped, and a sense of melancholy settled over the clearing. Mira and Eli felt it too, a growing sadness that threatened to consume them. "It's beautiful," she whispered, reaching out. But Eli flinched and stepped back. "Is this what it means to bloom?" she called out, her voice echoing with wonder. Eli felt a strange pull towards the well, like an invisible thread tugging at his heart. Seeing the wilting flowers, she sat on a nearby stone. "You're not watering them with your tears anymore," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. Mira and Eli exchanged a worried glance. "We're trying not to rely on our sadness," Eli admitted, frustration lacing his voice. "But the garden is dying without it." The old woman nodded slowly. "That's because you're watering the wrong thing," she said, her voice raspy with age. "You're watering the flowers, not the feelings they represent." Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the water and closed his eyes, bracing for impact. Instead, he felt Mira's hand clutching his, anchoring him in a way that no root or vine ever could. Opening his eyes, he saw a determined set to her jaw and a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. With a mischievous grin, she said, "You can call me the Bloom Master. What will you call me?" The answer came instinctively. "Keeper," he whispered, feeling the weight of the title settle upon him. Together, they learned to nurture the garden. Mira's touch brought forth flowers, a myriad emotions: joy, sorrow, anger, hope, even memories. Every blossom unfurled like a whispered secret, bathing the clearing in vibrant hues. "Don't touch it," he snapped, startled by her boldness. Mira drew her hand back, surprised by his outburst. "Why not? Why does it have to be hidden?" she asked softly. Eli looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "It's not ready," he mumbled, ashamed of his defensiveness. Mira tilted her head, studying him. "Perhaps it's ready for me," she said quietly. Before Eli could respond, a vine shot out, wrapping itself around her wrist. Alarmed, he rushed to her side, but the vine didn't hurt her. It simply held her hand, drawing her towards the well. Mira looked at Eli, her eyes shining with determination. "I won't let it hurt you anymore," she whispered, squeezing the vine gently. It responded by curling around her arm protectively. Mira smiled, her gaze fixed on the water. One day, a young woman named Mira stumbled upon the garden. She was small, but strong, her spirit bright, despite the shadows under her eyes. "See in the garden," she gasped, kneeling amidst the flowers. "It's alive," she murmured, tracing a leaf. Suddenly, a gust of wind scattered petals around her. Startled, she looked up, locking eyes with Eli. For a moment, he froze, surprised by the light shining from her. Quickly, he ducked behind a tree, hiding his face. Mira, however, didn't leave. She sat beneath a blossoming tree, waiting patiently. When the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Eli emerged cautiously. Seeing her still there, he asked, "Are you lost?" "I am," Mira admitted, a faint smile touching her lips. "But maybe that's why I found this place." Looking down, he saw tiny blue flowers sprouting from his feet, anchoring him to the spot. They seemed to drink his tears, growing steadily, tendril by tendril. In minutes, they climbed his legs, his torso, his arms. By the time they reached his face, they had bloomed into a crown. Tiny blue flowers with the power to keep him rooted forever. Eli screamed, this time, the sound echoing through the clearing. Startled by the commotion, a butterfly flew past. Seeing Eli landed on his shoulder, it was unlike any butterfly he'd ever seen, with wings patterned like leaves and a body that shimmered like moonlight. "Why?" Eli cried, his voice hoarse. "Why me?" The butterfly fluttered closer, nudging his ear. "You are the rain," it whispered, "and this is your garden." In the center, a well of water shimmered, its surface mirroring the heavens. This was the garden. The girl dipped her hands inside and pulled out a handful of rain, fat teardrops heavy with light. "It's beautiful," Eli breathed, reaching out. But she stopped him with a look. "Not yet," she whispered, her voice like wind chimes. "It waits for someone who understands." Then she vanished. She looked at the villagers and saw their stories, their silent sorrows, their hidden wounds. Without a word, she turned and walked away. The villagers looked at each other, shrugged, went back to their routines. The stranger led him to a place no villager had ever seen. Eli searched for her, called her name, but she was gone. Confused and scared, he sank onto a nearby rock. Suddenly, the well began to shake. Vines snaked out, pulling him toward the water. Eli screamed, but no sound came out. Instead, a sob, then another, and another, each racking his body until he crumpled, defeated, at the well's edge. And as he wept, the water flooded up, engulfing him. When Eli opened his eyes, he was inside the well. Years passed. Eli learned to control the rain. It fell from his fingertips, nurturing the garden into existence. Eli hesitated, torn between his desire to hide and a yearning to share. Finally, he led her to the well. In the swirling depths, Eli saw his pain reflected back at him, the pain he'd buried under layers of routine and control. Moments later, he heard her voice echoing from the depths. As the garden grew, so did the whispers about it. One day, an old woman entered the garden. Her eyes, though dimmed by age, held a quiet strength. Mira and Eli pondered her words. Could it be that they'd been tending to the symptoms instead of the source? For Mira, it was anger, a simmering rage she'd buried after a childhood accident. From then on, the rain came not only from the sky but from within. One dusk, as the rain returned in silver threads, Mira stood at the gate of the garden, watching two paths. I am surrounded by rain. I can smell the petrichor rising up from the ground, see the sun sparkling on wet pavement, hear the rhythmic drumming of water on the roof. Just a slow turning inward of trees, of hearts, of the earth itself. A child's off-key humming. The chimes from the bell tower at dusk, all of it fed the garden's memory. He learned that the soil loved imperfection, the missed note, the broken voice, and the flowers responded. One bloomed only when two people reconciled beneath its branches. The garden serves as a metaphor for the growth that can occur when we confront our difficult emotions and allow ourselves to feel them. Their stories of survival and healing have inspired me to write about the possibility of finding beauty and growth in difficult circumstances. Additionally, I wanted to pay homage to the work of Carl Jung and his concept of the shadow self. And as always, keep reading and writing, because that's how we grow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow self refers to the dark, hidden aspects of our personality that we often try to deny or repress. I believe that by confronting our shadow selves, we can heal and grow as individuals. Finally, I was inspired by the natural world, particularly the idea of plants as symbols of healing and transformation. Plants have the remarkable ability to grow and thrive, even in the most challenging environments. They can heal themselves from damage and even clean toxins from the soil. I wanted to capture this sense of resilience and renewal in my story. I also wanted to show how human connection can help us heal. I want them to see that healing and growth are possible, even after experiencing great pain. I also hope that the story will inspire people to connect with others and to show kindness and compassion to themselves, to those around them. Ultimately, I want readers to feel seen and understood, and to know that they are not alone in their struggles. Through acts of kindness, empathy, and forgiveness, we can nurture our own growth and that of others. The characters in the story represent different aspects of the healing process. Eli brings music and laughter, reminding us that joy can be found even in difficult times. The older woman represents resilience and the power of memory, and Mira embodies the transformative power of compassion. Another, an almost invisible moss, grew whenever someone dared to forgive themselves. Mira began calling these weatherless flowers blooms that no longer waited for the sky to grant permission. They bloomed because of what was, because of what was true. The rain, once frequent, now came less often, but when it did, it arrived like a memory, slow, reverent, full of hush. The handwriting was hurried, unfinished. I came once when I was young. I never believed what I saw was real. They listened not just to each other, but to the space between things. Some had begun planting small gardens of their own, not for food or show, but for feeling. They left chairs beside them. They let weeds grow that looked like stars. They learned to call silence a season, and whenever the sky opened and rain softened the rooftops, people would smile not with joy, but with recognition. The rain was no longer just weather. It was an invitation. and my Rushi became less of a keeper and more of a thread, a quiet guide, woven through the hearts of those who had once walked that hidden path. Her feet still knew every root, every stone, every whisper the garden kept close. But she no longer waited. Now, she walked the village. She listened to those who didn't know how to ask. She brought stories, wrapped in raindrops. She left seeds in cracked teacups. She taught children how to cry into the soil and grow something from it. And wherever she went, the scent of rain followed. Not the kind that came from clouds, the kind that came from within. And so the garden lives, not only under a stone arch, behind the village, hidden in trees and mist, but in every place where someone dares to open their heart to sorrow and still say, "Let something bloom here." But I remember the way it smelled like rain that had waited just for me. Now, I am old. I have little to give. But if the garden still listens, I want it to know. I kept that scent inside me. It got me through. Mira pressed the paper to her chest, and though the sky was dry, the garden filled with the scent of the very rain that visitor had once remembered. It hung in the air not as water, but as presence. And for the first time in weeks, Mira wept, not for sorrow, for the immensity of it all. For how something so small, one bloom, one note, one remembered scent could ripple outward and reach someone decades later. The garden, it seemed, had grown beyond its soil. And still, the garden bloomed, not with spectacle, not with color that demanded attention. No, now it bloomed in quieter ways. A soft warmth beneath the soles of visitors' feet. A pale bloom that opened only for a moment and then folded like a sigh. A scent that reminded you of a time before something broke inside you. It had grown into something more than soil and seed. It had become a feeling, a place you carried with you. Mira knew this. She no longer needed to wait for the garden to speak. It was in her breath now, in the way she listened to footsteps, in how she could look into someone's eyes and feel the weather inside them. One evening, under a sky heavy with unfallen snow, she met a woman at the edge of the path. She was older, wrapped in wool and silence. She didn't ask for the garden. She only stood near it, watching the trees. Mira approached, gently. "You're welcome to walk through." "I'm not sure I deserve to," the woman replied, her voice like old parchment. Mira looked at her closely. Her eyes were full of stories that hadn't been spoken for decades. Everyone deserves to be seen by something that still knows how to bloom. The woman hesitated. Then she stepped under the arch. That night, the rain did not fall, but the garden bloomed anyway. Tiny white blossoms sprung from the ground around her, steps like snowflakes the earth had chosen to hold instead of release. The woman wept without sound, and when she left, a single flower remained in her place, its stem wrapped in silver thread. Mira knelt beside it, and for the first time, she realized the garden had learned to bloom without rain, because now the people brought their own rain. Not just sorrow but tenderness, not just grief but longing, remembrance, and hope. They came not for miracles, but for truth. And the truth was, when they gave something to the garden, it bloomed because they had rain. Rain. Glorious rain. How do you write about rain? It is a question I ask myself every summer when the skies stay stubbornly blue and the crops begin to wither. It seems there are only so many ways to describe water falling from the sky. So when I heard about this writing prompt, my initial reaction was, meh, that's too cliché. But then I thought, challenge accepted. What if I wrote a story about rain that isn't just water falling from the sky, but water rising from the heart? I wanted to create a world where rain is both literal and metaphorical, where the absence of rain reflects inner drought, and where the return of rain signifies healing and renewal. The winter came gently that year. There was no sharp snap of frost, no cruel wind howling through shuttered windows. Eli, still growing, now sang more than lullabies. He brought music from the village, a street violinist's tune. One evening, as the wind whispered through bare branches, Mira found a letter tucked beneath a stone, shaped like a heart. By spring, the village changed. More people walked slowly, even in the rush of morning. As I wrote this story, I wanted to explore the idea that our experiences shape us, that our pain can become a source of strength, and that healing is possible through acknowledging our wounds. This story was inspired by a few key sources. First, I was thinking of the countless individuals who have shown incredible strength and resilience in the face of adversity. I hope that readers will take away a sense of hope and possibility from this story. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and share it with others. Your support means everything to me. Have you ever loved something so deeply it hurt, and have you ever lost it? Not to a storm or an earthquake or any sudden force of nature, but gradually, bit by bit, season by season. It's that kind of loss that haunts the people who live in this village, nestled between two mountains. It's a tale as old as time, really, and yet unique to these quiet streets. It was the first warm night of early summer. The stars had come out slowly, one by one, like old friends arriving at the edge of a gathering too sacred to rush. A hush fell over the village, not from tiredness, but from reverence. Even the wind tiptoed through the tall grass. Mira stood at the garden's gate, not to enter, but to listen. There was no need to step inside anymore. She could feel its breath from here. The garden had grown like a song passed from person to person, not louder, but deeper, rooted. But that night, something different stirred, a pull not toward the garden, but beneath it. Mira followed her instinct, through the tall, whispering ferns, past a tree where Eli had once tied a ribbon for his sister, beneath the vine-covered arch, where a woman had first asked if she deserved to enter, and then at the base of the oldest tree, whose bark had seen centuries of grief, and still reached skyward. Mira found a box, small, wooden, worn smooth from years of waiting. It hadn't been placed there. It had grown there, as if the earth had cradled it in its roots for just the right moment. She opened it slowly. Inside, a folded letter, edges curled, ink faded to the hue of dusk. A ribbon, once crimson, now the color of softened memory. She unfolded it carefully and read, "To the one who listens, if you are reading this, then the garden has chosen you. I once tended it too long before the rains began to listen, before the blooms answered back, before people knew that pain, too, could flower. I did not know how to carry what I carried, but the earth did. And so, I gave it to the roots. The garden grew from that, from me, from silence. And one day, someone like you would come, someone not afraid of sorrow, someone who listens, someone who understands that rain is not a curse, but a blessing that asks us to stay soft, even when it hurts. If this garden is still blooming, then my life mattered. Thank you for blooming after me." Mira read the letter again, slower this time, until the words blurred with tears that didn't fall but settled behind her eyes like mist. She did not know the writer's name, but she knew their soul. She placed the letter back inside the box and pressed it into the soil, not to bury it but to return it, to let it become something again. And when she looked up, she saw it, a new flower, one she had never seen. Its petals were paper thin, like pressed parchment. Its color changed with the wind, blue, then violet, then a shimmer that wasn't quite color at all. It was a flower made from memory, a bloom born of every story ever spoken into the garden's quiet heart. Years ago, life in the village flowed like the nearby river, unpredictable and full of sunlight. Then the rains came, not a deluge, but a steady gray curtain that hid the sun and chilled the bones. Hope withered like the crops. The rains kept coming for 5 long years. For 5 long years, the people stayed inside. When they stepped outside, the rain soaked their skin and seeped into their very beings, and what emerged was not mud, but memories. A lifetime of unspoken words, buried resentments, losses too painful to bear. And they cried. 4, 5 long years. The rain fell, and the people cried. But the strange thing was, after the 5th year, the crying didn't stop. It continued, even when the sun returned, even when the land bloomed again, even when laughter echoed in the streets. The crying continued. Now, the sun shone through stained glass windows onto tear-strewn faces. Laughter had undertones of grief, and joy was measured in teaspoons, a little bit each day. Then Mira came. She was barely more than a girl when she arrived, though some say she seemed older. Her eyes deep pools reflecting skies they couldn't see. When asked why she came, she simply replied, "The earth whispered to me." Mira didn't speak much. She walked barefoot, tracing lines in the dirt, hands calloused, arms bare, shoulders straight. She did not flinch at the chill nor break bread with anyone. And yet, somehow, everyone noticed her. She moved like a question, her presence a gentle disturbance that woke something within them. Without knowing why, the villagers began visiting her, bringing scraps of stories, bits of memories. They spoke of joys and heartbreaks, fears and regrets, hopes and dreams. Some cried as they spoke, others stumbled over their words. Some only whispered, others filled the air with their voices. And Mira listened. She sat for hours, days sometimes, listening to their tales, their traumas, their tragedies. She breathed it all in, nodding, occasionally reaching out to touch a hand, stroke a cheek, rest a head on a shoulder. She didn't try to fix anything. She didn't offer advice. She simply listened, absorbing their pain, letting it flow through her, anchoring it to the earth. Slowly, the days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the constant stream of sorrows began to lessen. People stopped visiting Mira, not because they had forgotten their grief, but because they no longer felt the need to carry it alone. Something had shifted within them. They now knew they were not their stories. They were the ones telling them. One day, the bravest of them all, a young boy named Eli, asked Mira, "When can we go outside?" She looked up from the ground where she had been sitting, her gaze steady and calm. "Today," she said. Hand in hand, they walked to the edge of the village and stepped into the fields. The rain had stopped, but as they touched the soil, a single teardrop splashed onto Eli's outstretched palm. He looked up at Mira, surprised. "What does it mean?" he asked, tilting his head. Mira cupped his face in her hands, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "It means," she whispered, "it's okay to cry in the rain." And so they did. The boy cried and the girl smiled through her tears. Soon, others joined them, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. They cried in the rain, not with the desperation of those drowning in grief, but with the release of those finally letting go. In the days that followed, the people began to change. They started small, speaking kindly to strangers, sharing smiles, tending to the neglected land, planting seeds. They started greeting each other at the start of the day, asking about the dreams that danced in their heads during the long nights. And when a storm gathered, instead of cowering indoors, they stood at their doors, arms raised, faces tilted upward, welcoming the rain, welcoming the cleansing, the release. They began naming the clouds and making wishes upon them. When a rainbow arched across the sky, they laughed, for it was a promise, a testament that even after the darkest storms, beauty emerges. And when the sun returned, they basked in its golden embrace, remembering its warmth, drinking in its light. And that is when the garden began to grow, planted by unseen hands, nurtured by whispers, watered by tears, protected by laughter, sheltered by love. It bloomed with a strength that surprised them all. Mira watched this transformation, her heart swelling with silent pride. She realized that she hadn't created the garden. She had merely been a catalyst. The garden was a part of them, a reflection of their resilience, their capacity for love and healing. It was a testament to the human spirit, its ability to endure, to adapt, to thrive even in the face of adversity. The garden became their sanctuary, a place where they could shed their burdens, tend to their wounds, find solace and strength. It was a place where they could remember and honor their pain, but also where they could celebrate their joy, their hope, their dreams. And with each passing day, the garden grew, not in size, but in significance, anchoring them to the earth, connecting them to each other, reminding them that they were not alone. The garden was their shared secret, their silent strength, their whispered hope. and in its quiet presence, they found the courage to face the world, to embrace the sunshine and the shadows, to laugh and to cry, to love and to heal. So if you ever find yourself amidst the gentle hills and the whispering trees of this village, take a moment to breathe in the fragrance of the blossoms, to feel the earth beneath your feet, to listen to the bird song in the air, and remember the people who dared to cry in the rain, who found solace in the garden, who learned that even in the darkest of times, hope can bloom. This is an episode about grief. There are gardens we plant with seeds, and there are gardens we plant with love. But some gardens, the most sacred ones, are planted with memory, and memory never dies. Years passed like petals falling in slow motion. Mira had grown older, but never heavier. The one who proved that pain can be planted, watered with tears, and grown into light. And the garden, it continues. Wherever someone stops in the rain, places their sorrow in the soil, and says, "Let this, too, become beautiful." Her steps were lighter now, like she had been slowly handing her burdens to the roots with every passing season. Unlike other girls her age, Alara preferred the company of raindrops on window panes to that of other children. While others played, she read books filled with tales of fantastical creatures in faraway lands. Though loved by her parents, their concern for her isolation grew, especially after a fierce storm trapped Alara indoors for weeks. One day, her mother, worried sick, marched into her room. "Alara," she said, voice shaking, "why do you prefer being alone? Don't you want to make friends, to laugh and play like other children?" Alara looked up from her book, her eyes reflecting the stormy sky. "I do have friends," she said softly, "and my laughter echoes in the wind, if you know where to listen." Her mother, confused, followed her gaze to the window. There, amidst the gray clouds and lashing rain, a lone figure stood beneath an old oak tree. "Who is that?" she asked, shielding her eyes against the glare. "A friend," Alara replied, a smile touching her lips. As the days grew darker and storms more frequent, the villagers grew uneasy. What was Alara doing with that strange boy? Why did he come during storms, staying all day and sometimes night? Whispers filled the village square. Was he a thief, a runaway, or worse, a monster who lured children away? Afraid, Alara's parents forbade her from seeing him. But the next time a storm raged, she slipped out her window and raced to the oak tree. There, soaked to the bone, she found the boy, his hair a mess of dark curls, eyes the color of the stormy sea. He wasn't scary, just sad. "Why do they call you a monster?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. He turned to her, a faint smile gracing his lips. "Because," he said, his voice like the rustling of leaves, "I understand the language of storms." Alara stared at him, mesmerized. And then, as if realizing something, her eyes widened. "So I'm not the only one." The boy shook his head. "You are special, Alara. You see, I am just a listener. But you speak to them. You soothe their anger and calm their cries. The storms, they choose you." Suddenly, a bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a deafening roar of thunder. Alarmed, Alara instinctively reached out to steady herself. The boy caught her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "Don't be afraid," he whispered, squeezing her hand. "I'm here." Together, they stood beneath the oak tree, connected by a bond forged in understanding and shared solitude. The storm raged around them, but within its fury, Alara found a strange sense of calm. She was not alone. She had a friend who understood her, who embraced her uniqueness instead of fearing it. In that moment, she knew she would face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing she had a friend who understood the language of storms. Her hair had turned the color of frost on pine bark. Her hands, lined with time, still felt warm, soil like a heartbeat. She still walked the garden, but it was not the same garden she had once discovered. Now, it was everywhere. The old path no longer ended at the wind-covered arch. It continued through fields, into villages, across bridges, and even into cities, where people began to build small corners of quiet, plant wildflowers where nothing was expected to grow, and leave benches beside them as invitations. They called them listening gardens. And Mira, she had become the story people passed between them like a cherished song. The woman who taught the rain to bloom, the one who carried silence like a gift, the last gardener whose footsteps turned into flowers. One night, the skies opened with a kind of rain no one had felt before. It didn't pour, it gathered. It came like breath after a long-held sob, soft and certain. The droplets shimmered slightly, as if lit from within, glowing with everything ever left in the garden. Every sorrow, every forgiveness, every whispered name of the lost. Mira sat beneath the first tree, now hollow and glowing faintly at its core. Eli was there too, older now, his voice deeper, his songs wiser. No words were exchanged. They didn't need any. The garden began to bloom slowly, impossibly, as if everything that had ever been felt was now returning to say thank you. Flowers no one had names for. Colors no language could hold. Scents that reminded people of things they had never lived but somehow still remembered. The rain fell through the petals and became light, and in the center of the garden, where Mira now knelt, something began to rise. Not a flower, not a tree, but a door, made of mist and vine, feather and fragrance, framed in golden rain. It pulsed with a quiet knowing. Mira smiled. "I've been waiting," she whispered. Eli looked at her, eyes full of everything. "You're not leaving us, are you?" Mira reached out and touched his face, the way rain touches glass. "No, the garden is never gone. I'm just blooming elsewhere now." And with that, she stepped through. She did not vanish. She's like fog into morning, like rain into root, like story into soul. The villagers say she still walks the listening gardens, that children hear her in the hush between thunder and bloom, that flowers sometimes nod without wind, that when someone finally dares to forgive the impossible, a scent, sweet. They say when you visit a garden in the rain and feel something inside, you begin to open it because she est near. Mira, the first and final bloom, the keeper of soft things. Once upon a time, in a village, nestled between hills and the sea, lived a girl named Alara. And if you thought that was a good story, wait till you hear this one about a young man who lived in a world without colors. Welcome to the garden. Long after Mira stepped through the rainlit door, the garden remained, not just in scent or in story, but in the quiet things people did when they thought no one was watching. Not as the new keeper, but as the new listener. She wore boots too big and a raincoat patched with sunflowers, her way of holding sorrow, like it was something sacred, not shameful. And with each visitor, a new kind of flower emerged. Some bloomed when laughter returned to someone's life. Others only opened when someone spoke their truth, even if their voice shook. A few only lived 4 seconds. But in those seconds, the whole garden glowed. Eli began to understand. The garden was not finished. It was becoming, always becoming. Here, anger was a seedling that needed tending, not a weed to be Are you ready? Ready for what? To listen to her. Here, fear was a caterpillar that would one day spin its wings, not a monster to be fought. And there, curled at the base of a sunflower, lay a worn leather notebook. It was a way of existing in the spaces between words, in the silences that echoed with unspoken truths. The seasons shifted, painted the garden in new hues, but some things remained. Its branches sagged, heavy with rain, its leaves scattered around like fallen stars. Mira! She stood, framed in the opening, their silhouette etched against a fading light. She held a small bouquet of wildflowers, their colors muted by the storm. She stepped closer, and as their eyes met, a smile touched her lips. As he leaned against its rough bark, he felt a familiar pull, not of sadness, but of homecoming. They grew wild after the storm, just like us. The worn leather notebook at the base of the sunflower, the unfinished poem tucked beneath a loose brick, the melody that lingered on a half-opened flower. The garden held these things, not to preserve the past, but to tend the future. It was learning to bloom in the cracks of a broken world. Somewhere inside it, A small bell chimed, marking a moment, a memory, a story. Rowan sat beneath the sunflower, pulling his knees to his chest. "Will you show me the new ones?" "Of course." He took a shaky breath and began to write. And as his pen moved across the page, the garden listened. It always had, it always would. As Rowan reached for it, the pages fluttered open, revealing delicate script, each word a brushstroke. On his heart, for when the sun dips low, and shadows stretch long, and memories dance in the golden light, I will meet you at the edge of day. We will watch the clouds turn to velvet and paint the sky with our tears and laughter. For in the end, all we have are stories and the courage to tell them. The last page was blank, waiting. He stayed as long as he could, days melting into weeks, weeks stretching toward months. He walked past, barely visible, cradled tiny blossoms that tasted of ash and salt. He learned the names of weeds and stars and spoke them softly as if afraid to wake a dream. She didn't speak, just stood there. Eli watched from a distance. After a long while, the girl stepped inside. A place where grief could grow wings, where quiet was not emptiness, but presence, where rain didn't fall to drown, but to remind us to pause, to kneel, to bloom, even now, especially now. And wherever she walked, the grass beneath her feet turned silver. There were places that mirrored the world, filled with edges and answers and expectations, and sometimes those edges cut deep. Sometimes they cut deeper than the garden could hold, as if moonlight had waited for her to come close enough to touch it. She sat by a puddle and whispered to it. The water rippled like it was listening. Blood trickled down his palm, staining the ground a darker red. His eyes were wide and wild, like a bird that couldn't find its nest. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he whispered, clutching the first tree like it might save him. "I wanted to do it right, but I can't get it right. Nothing gets right." The tree held him for a moment, then pulled away gently. "There is nothing to fix," a voice echoed in his ear. It was older, deeper, wilder. The roots rumbled. "You cannot make it right because it already is. You do not have to fix it, because it is worthy as it is." The young man looked around wildly, searching for the speaker. Then he saw the blood on his hands. He saw the torn canvas bag at his feet, the unfinished sketch spilling from it. He saw the lines on the tree, the scars on the rocks, the tears carved into the bark of another tree. He saw the silent symphony playing all around him. And something shifted in his chest, something tight and wild and wordless, like a scream swallowed by the sky. "I don't want to make it right," he finally whispered. "I just want to stay here." Then she looked up and said, "She's here, isn't she?" Eli froze. The girl didn't blink. "She left the garden, but she didn't leave us." Eli knelt beside her. "What's your name?" The girl looked down at the petals gathering in her lap. "I don't know yet, but I think the garden is growing one for me." And so it began again. Not a beginning, not a return, but a continuation. Because the garden was never a place, it was always a gesture, a breath taken after breaking, a hand he extended without question, a seed planted in the middle of a storm, simply because someone believed it might bloom. He didn't change the garden, he let it keep changing him. Each day, he walked the edges. Each night, he sat beneath the first tree, now glowing more softly, like a lantern under snow. He wrote songs that didn't rhyme, and poems that were never finished. He read old notes, people left in cracks, between stones. I finally said her name out loud. This flower grew after I let go. I thought I was alone. Eli didn't answer them. He just let the garden reply, with petals, with echoes, with rain. A child whispering apologies to a broken toy before burying it under a rose bush. A widow humming to herself as she placed tea on an empty chair. A boy who carried silence in his pocket like a stone until he learned that even silence blooms when warmed by kindness. The garden listened. It always had. It always would. Eli stayed. Then one summer evening, a girl arrived, not more than 10. Soon, others followed, not because they were told, but because something in them remembered. Remembered Mira's softness, her silence, and maybe one day the whole world would feel like this. But the garden couldn't be everything for everyone. One day, a young man named Rohan came, stumbling through the trees. The garden always knew what to do. It wrapped around him with moss and loam and whispered truths that settled in his bones. One morning, a crow landed on his shoulder. It tilted its head, regarding him with obsidian eyes. Then it spoke. They walked to the furthest clearing. In the center, sunlight dripped through leaves, painting moving patterns on the ground. The sun dipped low, and shadows stretched long, and memories danced in the golden light. Because the garden was not a place, it was a practice. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. One evening, after a particularly brutal storm, Eli found himself drawn to the first tree. From the corner of his eye, he saw her. "I thought you might like these," she said, offering him the flowers. Their petals glistened with raindrops. He took the flowers, their stems cool in his hands. "Why did you come back?" Mira tilted her head, regarding him with eyes the color of rain. "I never left." The garden sighed, rustling its leaves like 1,000 whispered secrets. Mira stepped forward, her hand outstretched. Eli smiled, his heart echoing the chime from within the tree. And as they walked together into the heart of the garden, side by side, hand in hand, the trees rustled with delight, the flowers swayed in approval, and the first tree hummed with quiet joy, watching over them both. For in the end, all we have are stories and the courage to tell them. The girl came every day. No one knew where she lived. No one asked. The garden didn't require names or histories, only presence. She brought no offerings, no stories, only her silence and something glowing beneath it. She listened to the petals shifting, to the puddles remembering, to the wind weaving messages only the lonely could hear. They came to remember, to plant something in honor of, to thank the rain, not just endure it, a floating bloom that hovers just above the ground before vanishing into mist. If you enjoyed this story, please consider supporting us. Your support allows us to keep bringing you enchanting tales that explore profound emotions and universal experiences. Together, we can nurture a space where imagination and empathy flourish. Let's keep this garden blooming. And if you have your own story to share, or if you'd like to send us feedback, feel free to comment below. We love hearing from our viewers, and your comments inspire us to keep creating. So let's continue to grow this magical garden together. Thank you for being a part of our story. They say if you see one, you're being asked something. Not what's wrong, but what are you ready to let bloom? The tiny altars of memory appeared at the edges of gardens around the world. A ribbon tied around a branch, a stone with initials scratched in it, a note that read only, "I let it rain." The girl no longer walked. She flew barely above the ground, as if the sorrow she had once carried had turned to light inside her. Some say she was a spirit, others said she was the next gardener. But Eli knew better. She's the bloom, not the gardener. And one night, she turned to Eli and whispered, "It's time." He didn't ask what she meant. He only nodded, and she stepped into the first tree, not through bark, but through memory itself. She vanished in a quiet shimmer, and from where she had stood, the rainlights rose again. But this time, they didn't just float. They moved north, south, toward every place that had ever held sorrow too long. They didn't need to be planted. They planted themselves. And so the garden expanded, not by root, by memory, by invitation, by rain. And in her silence, the garden bloomed differently. There was a new kind of flower now, translucent, tiny. It shimmered like a raindrop, trying to remember what it felt like to fall. These flowers didn't grow from the soil. They floated just above it, as if born from the breath between heartbreak and healing. The villagers began to call them, and they only appeared when she was near. Eli watched her, not with worry, but with wonder. He had known the garden through Mira's hands, through his own grief, through music. But this child, she knew it from within. She didn't visit the garden. She was a part of it. One evening, thunder rolled in like a slow drumbeat. People gathered inside, but the girl stayed. Eli stood by the arch, watching her. She stood still in the center of the garden, arms open, face lifted. The rain fell like it remembered her, heavy, warm, filled with something ancient. And in the downpour, the rainlights bloomed in thousands, a slow constellation rising from the earth. Then, for the first time, the girl spoke loud enough for the sky to hear. I remember everything. The storm paused. Even the trees leaned in, she continued, eyes closed. I remember the mother who sang to the rain, and the father who never came back from it. I remember the voice that told me to hide my sadness, and the one that said it was okay to cry. I remember the garden before it bloomed, and I remember her. A single petal, glowing like dusk, floated down from the first tree. It landed in her palm, and there before everyone's eyes the rainlights rose, not just above the soil, but into the sky. They didn't fade. They ascended, and the sky for the briefest moment carried flowers. After that night, something changed. People no longer came just to heal. Now, in cities where no one knew quiet, people pause at corners when it rains. And sometimes they see it. Thank you for watching. When the world is quiet, some places have a way of disappearing. Not because they vanish, but because the world forgets them. Its houses huddled together, shutters closed, even in summer. Its children spoke softly, even when laughing. She had never seen her mother smile. She had learned, far too young, to fold her feelings into corners and paint happy faces on cakes for other people. And no one ever asked, "How are you?" Because no one wanted to say, "I don't know." And still, Alara lived beside the hushed town in the silent library, dreaming of places that shimmered with sound, until one night the sky unfurled something new. She filled an old jar with rain, wrote a single word on a paper scrap, "Begin," and placed both beside her sleeping mother's bed. She didn't explain. She didn't need to. It wasn't the usual drizzle that left muddy corners, and someone else said, I remembered a name I hadn't said in years. It was a place that bloomed in remembering. And Driven Hollow, once forgotten, had remembered itself. It was in the whispers of leaves and the sigh of the wind. It was in the cracks of old buildings, where wildflowers pushed through, refusing to be silenced. It was in the stories people told, and the songs they hummed, even when no one was listening. The town clock, which hadn't chimed in over a decade, ticked once. There, amidst the glistening ruins of the rainlight tree, stood Ella, her form bathed in the golden hues of sunrise, her eyes shining with newfound wisdom. They reached out, their fingertips tracing the luminous lines of the map, their faces alight with recognition. She had not only helped them remember who they were, but also rediscover the strength that lay dormant within their shared history. In that moment, she knew that Driven Hollow was more than just a town. People from neighboring towns and villages came to witness a spectacle, to bask in the glow of remembered lives, and memories bloomed anew under the sheltering light of the rainlight tree. Soon, the map, now radiant and whole, rose above the tree, becoming a beacon of remembrance for all who sought solace or inspiration. Those who touched it found not only the map of Driven Hollow, but fragments of their own forgotten histories, sparking their own journeys of remembrance. It was a sanctuary of remembrance, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. The sun climbed higher in the sky, painting the heavens with hues of hope and renewal. The people of Driven Hollow, rejuvenated by the return of their memories, began to stir. They straightened their shoulders, their eyes regaining their lost sparkle. The map, now glowing softly, floated above their heads, guiding their steps toward the remnants of the rainlight tree. As they touched the map, fragmented memories returned. Faces long forgotten swam into focus, and stories long silenced found their voices. The map became a communal canvas, each person adding their own brushstrokes to the grand tapestry of Driven Hollow's history. In her hands, she held a single rain-kissed leaf, its veins shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Suddenly, the leaf unfolded, revealing a map. It wasn't just any map. It charted the very essence of Driven Hollow, its heart, its history, its people. Each twist and turn whispered tales of lives lived, dreams cherished, and bonds unbroken. More than just a map, it was a testament to the indomitable spirit of remembrance. Torrential rain lashed the town, wind clawed at windows, and a bolt of lightning split the sky. Panic surged within her. Had the storm taken back what it had given? Was the silence Driven Hollow's only inheritance? She stumbled into the square, drenched and trembling, seeking answers from the rainlight tree, only to find it bare. Laughter echoed through the square, mingling with the scent of blossoming flowers, a melody of joy that had long been silenced. As the days turned into weeks, the rainlight tree sprouted anew, its branches laden with luminous leaves that shimmered with shared memories. Beneath its sheltering canopy, the townspeople gathered, their voices weaving a tapestry of remembrance. They told stories of their ancestors, sang songs of their triumphs, and cried tears of joy and sorrow, finding solace in the circle of their community. Its blooms, its leaves, its memories, all swept away by the tempest. Fear tightened its grip on the town, chasing people inside, huddling close. In the face of the storm, all the fragile blooms of remembrance threatened to wither away. Alara watched as the town bloomed anew, not without its bruises, but with a resilience born of remembering. She watched as people, like wildflowers, turned toward the light. Then a voice, soft yet resolute, broke through the roar of the wind. "Why do you weep, child of the rainlight?" Startled, Alara looked up to see an ethereal figure materialize amidst the storm, wreathed in silver light. "Who are you?" Alara whispered, silencing her fear. "I am the echo of your whispers," the figure answered, extending a hand. "The strength of your memories, woven with the essence of this rain. Together, we are the garden." Alara hesitated, then took the offered hand. As their fingers met, a surge of power coursed through her, filling her with the resilience of her ancestors, the enduring spirit of Driven Hollow. Rising to her feet, she felt a transformation within her. The fear receded, replaced by a determination as vast as the storm itself. With newfound strength, she raised her face to the tempest, her eyes blazing with resolve. "Help me," she cried out, her voice ringing with the echoes of generations past. "Help me stand against the forgetting." And in that moment, the storm seemed to listen. The wind shifted, the rain softened, and a luminous glow enveloped Alara. She reached out, touching the rain-soaked stones, and with each touch, the memories they held surged back. The life stories of Driven Hollow streamed into her, binding her to the town's history, its struggles, its joys, its resilience. Armed with these memories, Alara confronted the storm, weaving them into shields against the darkness. Hope rekindled in the hearts of those around her, drawing them to the square. Hand in hand, they stood against a storm, their shared memories, their bulwark, their determination, their light. And as the first rays of dawn pierced the retreating clouds, a profound stillness descended upon Driven Hollow. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of petrichor and the promise of renewal. Over the weeks that followed, more rainlights came. They floated like fireflies, but carried more than glow. They carried permission. She looked up to see an old woman framed against the gray, her eyes like pools of twilight. "You were right," the woman said, her voice a melody long forgotten. "We did forget, but forgetting can be a kind of remembering. We kept this place alive in our forgetting." A tear traced a silver path down Elare's cheek, then another and another. They weren't tears of sadness, but of homecoming. She understood now. Remembering didn't have to be painful. Sometimes it could be healing. Sometimes forgetting could be a way of making space for remembering. To cry, to hope, to speak. And slowly, Driven Hollow began to change. Not in noise or color, but in texture. The heaviness lifted. People planted seeds beside their doorsteps, not just of flowers, but of memory. A boy painted his sister's lullaby on the wall behind the bakery. A woman left open umbrellas filled with poems in the square. Old men began playing music they once swore they'd forgotten. And one morning, Alara found a note folded beneath the rainlight tree. "The garden remembers you now. Your voice helped it grow here." It wasn't signed, but Alara recognized the writing. It matched her own, nor the kind of rain that chased people inside. This was different. It came at dusk, with no warning, gentle, glowing, as if dipped in memory, and in the center of the silent square, a rainlight floated down. For years, the tallest building in town, the library, stood draped in ivy, its windows dark and vacant, until one day a new girl came to live in the house beside it. They sit between hills that had once been orchards and skies that rarely cry anymore. Their names are spoken only by the wind, like a secret it doesn't want to remember. The people there grow still, not in peace, but in pause, as if time exhaled and never quite inhaled again. No one noticed it at first, except for Ella, who stood by her window watching. When she went out to find it, it didn't move. It waited. When she knelt beside it, a voice whispered, not from outside, but inside, "Say what no one else dares to say." Her lips trembled. Then she whispered, "I miss who we were." Before the silence, the rainlet lifted, revealing a crack in the stone step of the town library. And right there, a bloom appeared, small, silver-veined, soft blue petals curling inward, like it was listening. This was the case with Driven Hollow, a place that existed somewhere between then and now, in the hush before stories begin. Her name was Elia, and she brought with her the scent of distant storms and eyes that held the memory of laughter. Now, years passed. Leaves turned and fell. It wasn't much to look at, no bigger than a child's fist. Yet it filled the empty square with an ache of recognition. That night, Alora returned home with quiet joy tucked beneath her ribs. In the morning, something unthinkable happened. People talked. Not loudly. Not much. But someone asked, "Did you see the light?" The garden, it seemed, was not only a place that bloomed in rain. Years spun by like the wind through orchard trees. Then one day, when the air hung heavy with the scent of rain-kissed blossoms, she felt a presence at her window. And as the rain began to fall, she realized the garden wasn't just outside. It was inside. Then the world shifted. The air grew cold and the sky wept with a fury it hadn't shown in years. Desperation gnawed at Alara's heart. She raced through the rain-swept streets, seeking solace in the whispering library, only to find its door locked. With a sob escaping her lips, she sank to her knees, burying her face in her hands. As the townspeople emerged from their homes, blinking in the soft morning light, they found themselves drawn to the town square. Touched by the sight, the townspeople began to stir. Alara watched, her heart swelling with pride and gratitude. With hands clasped, they set about the task of rebuilding, not just the tree, but their sense of community. Word spread far beyond Driven Hollow, carried on the wings of the wind. And so, Driven Hollow, once shrouded in the mists of forgetting, became a haven of remembrance, a sanctuary where stories thrived. Rainlight never asks to be seen. It appears when we are ready, not when the sky darkens, but when the heart does, and in places the world has overlooked, forgotten, or turned away from. The garden still blooms, not with noise, but with truth. Years passed, but always, somehow, it seemed to know where to find the thirsty roots, where to drench the budding shoots, where to water the blossoming flowers. He had known the garden before, but somewhere along the way, he'd lost his connection to it. Sometimes it fell on weary travelers, washing away their dirt and doubt. Sometimes it fell on sleeping gardens, awakening them to new life. And with each drop, the world became a little greener, a little cleaner, a little kinder. A reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope, beauty, and strength can be found in the most unexpected of places. For the rain, like life, is a constant reminder of the impermanence of all things, the inevitability of change, and the boundless capacity for renewal and rebirth, for the rain carried with it the essence of what had been, what was, and what would be. A reminder that even in the darkest storms, there is always the promise of sunshine. Now, he felt hollowed out by grief, adrift in a sea of memories. On days when the winds threatened to tear everything down, the rain sang songs of resilience. On days when the clouds obscured the stars, the rain painted pictures of beauty on window panes. People would gather beneath trees or by windows to listen to the rain, to feel its rhythm against their skin, to taste its sweetness on their tongues. They learned to find solace in its sound, strength in its touch, and poetry in its movement. Rain began to fall, and a young man quickened his pace, pulling his collar tight around his neck. A voice, soft as the patter of raindrops, stopped him in his tracks. "Where are you going? You have no umbrella. You will get soaked." The young man looked up to see the woman standing beneath the willow tree. Even from a distance, he recognized her. He recognized the kindness in her eyes, the strength in her stillness, the peace in her presence. As he approached her, he noticed a small patch of wildflowers growing at the base of the tree, vibrant and unafraid. Despite the rain, he realized then that he wasn't just seeking shelter. He was seeking solace, a moment of respite from the storm that raged within him. He hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Can I sit here?" The woman smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Only if you bring the sunshine," she replied, gesturing to the gray skies above. The young man couldn't help but smile back. "I'll do my best," he said, sitting down beside her. As the rain intensified, so did the conversation. He told her about his loss, about the pain that had consumed him since the day his brother died. He spoke of his guilt, of his anger, of his fear, of being alone. The woman listened patiently, occasionally offering a word of comfort or a gentle touch on his arm. When he finished, there was a long silence, broken only by the sound of the rain. "You carry a heavy burden," the woman finally said, her voice soft yet steady. "But you don't have to carry it alone." She paused, then added, "Sometimes the heaviest burdens become the greatest teachers. If you are willing to learn their lessons, they can lead you to the deepest wisdom and the greatest strength." The young man looked at her, surprised by her words. "What do you mean?" he asked. The woman pointed to the wildflowers at the base of the tree. "Look at them," she said. "Do you think they chose to grow here? Do you think they planned their roots or worried about the weather? No, they just grew. They bloomed, and in doing so, they teach us a valuable lesson. Sometimes the most painful experiences in our lives are not meant to destroy us. They are meant to transform us." The young man pondered her words, feeling a flicker of understanding ignite within him. "So what should I do?" he asked. The woman smiled. "Let go of the need to control," she said. "Embrace the uncertainty. Trust that you are exactly where you need to be." With a deep breath, the young man closed his eyes, letting the rain wash over him. As he did, he felt a sense of calm wash over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced since his brother's death. When he opened his eyes, the sky had cleared and a rainbow arched across the horizon. He looked up at the woman, his heart filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. The woman only smiled, her eyes twinkling with wisdom and kindness. The rain knew where to find the cracks in the pavement, where to fill up the empty bird bath, where to nurture the stubborn seeds pushing up through concrete. And everywhere it touched, it washed clean, washed new, washed free. It carried the scent of petrichor and possibility, of wet earth and wild hope. The world did not change suddenly. It changed like soil does, grain by grain, sorrow by sorrow, softened by slow rain. Some still walked with burdens too heavy to name. Some still built walls. But more and more, people began to carry seed pockets in their hearts. Tiny things, unspoken things, waiting for the right kind of storm to open them. In the hills above a river town, a woman wandered through a quiet grove of willows. Her eyes were soft with memory, her hands scarred in a way only love could leave. She had no name, at least, not one she shared. Children simply called her the one who blooms when it rains. She never claimed to be Mira, and no one needed her to. But when she sat beneath the trees, the rainlights gathered around her like birds returning home. She told stories, not from books, but from what the wind told her. She said, "Every sorrow wants to grow, but it needs a place to root. The garden gives it that place. We are not meant to carry everything forever. We are meant to bury some things and let them rise again as something softer. The rain is not here to ruin us. It's here to remember us." And one day, beneath a soft drizzle that smelled like lilac and soil, a child asked her, "Will the garden ever end?" The woman smiled and looked to the sky. "No," she whispered, "because the garden isn't here." She placed a hand over the child's heart. "It's here." And the rain continued falling. Some days, it was gentle. Some days, it poured. A young man walked through the town, his shoulders slumped, his eyes fixed on the cobblestones. And so the rain kept falling. Sometimes it fell on parched ground, bringing forth unexpected blooms. On days when the sun refused to shine, the rain whispered stories of hope. And so the legend of the Rainlights continued, a testament to the enduring power of nature and the human spirit.